Okay, what's going on here? Why is everything chrome?
Everything is chrome in the future.
Hello everyone and welcome back, and indeed the future is for sure chrome, or at least if this pen finds its way into your pen collection. This is the Chren 810, from the same brand that brought us the wonderful Chren Shark pen. They now have another pen to join the long pile of Chinese Lamy Safari clones, but this time in chrome. But really, the chrome actually took a really long time to grow on me, and I do mean a long time. I bought this pen back in 2018 when Chren pens first came on the market, and since then I haven't actually used it much until it grew on me, and since then it seems like this colour scheme has actually found its way onto a few other Chinese fountain pens. And I think the reason why it took me so long to come around to this pen was because I was coming from a more classical pen standpoint. You know, I prefer my traditional black pens in the cigar shape. This one is very outside of the norm, and after not using it for very long, I thought, well, what the hey? And after using it for a while, I was pretty impressed, at least to the extent I could be with your typical Lamy Safari clone. I mean, the Lamy Safari clones have gotten really good over the years. They are much better than the old fake Lamys or the old Jinhao 599, which actually had the wrong type of nib and was really easy to break because the threads were very brittle. And whilst they aren't fakes, and I do understand the whole grey area of them cloning the Lamy Safari design, which puts a lot of people off buying these pens are great, at least for $3. And the good thing is, for $3, you do get the whole Lamy Safari ergonomics, the Bauhaus body, that massive clip and ink window, the faceted ergo grip, which for me is now comfortable, now that I've grown and used it over the years, and a lot of people do swear by this ergonomic grip, and the pen posts nicely. I mean, that is the bare minimum that you would expect from one of these fakes. Now, quality-wise, this pen does just okay. I can't fault it for anything major, and I also can't find out what type of plastic they used for the pen. I'm not sure if it's ABS, but it certainly doesn't live up to the real deal. Holding the two next to each other, I can definitely tell that the Chinese copy is a little bit lighter and a little bit more creaky. When you unscrew it and such, it actually does make a few more creaking sounds, but overall the quality is just fine. A few things that I can fault it for though is obviously the gold clip is losing its plating and I haven't used it all that much. And the biggest issue for me is that chrome and chrome blue, whilst it is nice if it is to your taste, it really is a stickler for fingerprints. Now unscrewing the barrel, and we can see a very familiar red converter. Yes, this is the same one that we find on the Wingsung 6359, aka the Lamy All-Star clone, the Lamy Safari, but in aluminium. And it's a very similar story for the nib. They look and perform identical. And that's actually a good thing. I like the nib for what it is. This style of nib is very good. Every time I get it on a Chinese pen, it writes flawlessly. Whatever the manufacturing process is, they have it nailed down to a T. Great Nib Polishing yields a very smooth nib, which has no skipping issues, isn't too wet, which means you can write it on everyday copy paper. Now this is a great nib, though it's still undoubtedly a little bit dull. It's great for everyday writing, but it lacks the flex or line variation that makes nibs fun to write with. And nothing against the nib, it's the type of performance that you would get from this type of nib that you would find on pretty much every Lamy pen. And before I finish up on the nib, whilst I am only 99% sure of this, the reason why I think the nibs on the Wingsung and the Chren pens feel the same is because they are. Whilst doing my own research to make my own pen, I reached out to a whole bunch of nib manufacturers and I spoke to a certain one that as part of its product line had both Wingsung and Chren branded nibs as examples, as well as a few other brands that I won't mention here. Now, it's always possible that the nibs weren't from that specific factory, but seeing here now how the nibs are, well, they feel identical, my theory definitely seems plausible. Now, to sum up this pen, for $3, this is a fine example of a Lamy clone. If you like chrome, good. If you don't, well, don't get it. You're not missing out on all that much because you can get the same writing experience from the Wingsung 3008, 6359, and if you just want a Lamy clone but in aluminium, get the 6359. It's practically the same price, only in aluminium, which is way more durable. This is a fine everyday carry pen, solid, reliable, a little bit dull, but in chrome. Alright everyone, welcome to the writing sample for the Chren 810. This has the extra fine nib on it, and it is using Iroshizuku. This is just Jinhao. I'm using it because it looks like soy sauce. Why not? The paper that I'm using is just your standard Rhodia pad. Nothing special about it. So quick writing sample. And as you can see from the writing sample, there was no issues at all with this. These nibs are frankly amazing. The quality control and grinding on them is just brilliant. It's a very smooth nib, it writes perfectly, no issues whatsoever. The feed is well designed, there's very little variance in terms of flow, it's very, very consistent, and that's why, even on cheap copy paper, this is a very good nib. In terms of quick writing, my quick writing is pretty disastrous, but you can also see no issues whatsoever. But you also notice there's very little in terms of flex, there's very little in terms of shading. It's a very, like I said, it's very good, but it's also a little bit dull. To not try to be mean to them, but it is just a little bit dull. In terms of flex, no pressure, and as much pressure as you'd want. There is pretty much zero variation. Even slowly adding pressure, you would be pressed to tell any difference at all. In terms of ink flow, it's what you would expect from an extra fine nib. The flow's fine, it's very consistent, it keeps up with your writing. I think for this type of nib, it's perfectly fine. I will say to comment on the line strokes, it's a little bit thicker than I would think for your Asian extra fine nib, but considering that it is butter smooth, I'm not complaining. In terms of natural line variation, the side strokes seem to be a little bit thinner than the downstrokes, but you're not going to see any variation when it comes to everyday writing. Pretty much no natural line variation will show up. And in terms of reverse writing, yeah, you can reverse write on this, but it's doesn't feel all that nice, and considering that you have this textured ergo grip, you're not going to be doing too much writing upside down. And with that, thank you very much for watching.